What's up, everybody? This is the Gridiron Gilly Show. I'm the host, Gridiron Gilly. Today I have Coach Wade Lawson with the Waskom Wildcats with me. I try to be impartial, but in my opinion, Coach Lawson is the GOAT of 2A East Texas high school football. Coach Lawson, how you doing?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm doing well, doing well. Just in the middle of the grind of another football season.
Yes, sir. How's things going over there in Waskom?
They're going well. I think we're starting to hit our stride a little bit. No doubt about it. We definitely had a letdown week one. A lot of anticipation going into that game. We just didn't play to our standard. There's no doubt about it. Made way too many mistakes to win a big football game like that. Had some real costly penalties in the second half, had some touchdowns called back, and didn't fit the run well at all. Gave up, several plays over 50 yards, and just wasn't a recipe to win a big game. But I always say this: that's why you have to play those big games early. You have to play them. You have to test yourself early against another good team. And if you don't, it's too late when it matters. So, just kind of like Garrison this week, I think they turned the ball over like 6 times against Lovelady, another really good team, and they lost that game. So, it's all part of the growing process. And, as a coach, you like to see your team tested. And, we didn't play well that night. I thought we rebounded well since then. And beat a really talented Chevyville team here. We still made a lot of mistakes that night, but we were able to overcome them and play really hard and win that game. And now we just got to clean up some things going forward. We've got some big tests for us down the road in district. Got some teams that are red hot and really feeling good about themselves. And so we're going to play good football going forward.
I've seen a few Waskom games last year. I haven't seen y'all play this year. I did watch the Garrison game from my TV, of course, but I've heard from a few people now. I had a buddy, you know him. I'm wearing his hat right now. He's a supporter of the Waskom Wildcats, but he told me he went to that game of y'all and Garrison, and he went to the Joaquin and Frankston game. And I don't know much about Frankston. I didn't know they were as good as what they are. But
Right.
he was like, "Hey, that's the team." Which I think they're on the other side of the bracket. But he's like, "That's the team right there," in my opinion, or in his
Well,
opinion.
Frankston.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, they're region two. So, that we'll never see them unless it's for a state championship.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, they're on the
uh,
other side. And that's the bad thing. I was talking to a coach. I was talking to Dangerfield's coach the other night at the center game, and he was talking about 3A Division Two, and I was talking about 2A Division One, and I was talking about where we sit in Region Three. I was like, we barely ever get a chance to go to state because the juggernaut that is Region Four. I was like, if we could just be
yeah,
on the other side of the bracket, man, Joaquin probably
yeah,
done played for a state championship before.
right, no doubt. And that's I really don't like how they do it in football. In other sports, particularly like in baseball, once you get to the semis, they rank you 1 through 4. So you're not necessarily seeing the same team all the time. Of course, I really don't agree with how we do playoffs in Texas to begin with. I think Louisiana definitely has us beat on that. Just like, for example, you look at District 11 right now that Joaquin is in. There's 5 teams in that district that are playoff caliber football teams, and one of them's going to be sitting at home. I think your total body of work for the year should matter. And I believe in the PowerPoints. I think that's like I said, I think Louisiana has it right. I also, I'm a big proponent on if you win district, you should host a first round playoff game. You know, and honestly, pretty much all the way through. I'm not much on meeting halfway and neutral sites. I think your body of work should matter. If you're the higher ranked team, that should matter. You should get that home playoff game. Now, it's you can definitely be on the other side of that coin and be the lower ranked team. But hey, look, maybe you should have played a tougher schedule, or won some games earlier in the year to set yourself up for that. And it would take a lot of stress off of, small schools financially having to try to, find playoff games or sites and, and all that. And you just know, hey, look, I mean, you have to win big games on the road in district to win a district championship. So what's the difference in the playoffs, in my opinion? So, like I said, I think there's a major reform with how we do that. And I know they cite travel and this and that, and maybe, under some circumstances, teams could agree to play at a neutral site, but I'm pretty big on, hey, what happens between those white lines is all that matters. Everything else doesn't really matter. So, you got to roll the ball out and got to go play.
Yes, sir. Tell me a little bit about your team and your coaching staff. I know Nate Espy. I know that name. I've heard that name a lot, but that's the only guy I know of over there in Waskom. So if you want to go ahead and talk about your staff and your players, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'll start with my staff. Coming over here, when I took this job, I told the administration, I'm not one to come in and I don't necessarily believe in cleaning house. I wanted to come in. I wanted to see these coaches. I wanted to get to know them, and then we would go from there. Start off with that. My assistant head coach and co-defensive coordinator, Matt Good, has been here a long time. He's a Waskom guy through and through. He's seen the ups and downs of this program. He's a guy that is kind of my right hand here. He helps me in so many facets, and he's going to be a fine head coach one day. I was able to bring Stephen Hathaway with me from Joaquin. He was a guy who worked for Phil Castles in Henderson for several years. And when they made some changes there, I was able to get him to Joaquin. So he's my other co-defensive coordinator, handles the defensive line for me. And just he understood the defense that, I brought with me and how we wanted to do things. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I was able to hire Daniel Swaim here. He was the offensive line coach for all those years here. When Coach Keeling left to go to Tatum, he went to North Lamar to go be the offensive coordinator there. And, he just really understands the offense, understands the flex bone through and through. I was able to bring back Coach Logan McGill. Has been an offensive coordinator, a very experienced coach, really good in the weight room. And then just a really good group of core guys around that. I'm really, really high on my coaching staff. I think they're a bunch of good guys. And anybody that knows me knows, like, the first and foremost, if you don't love kids, you can't work for me. And that's just how it is. I got a bunch of guys that love kids, love the game, truly care about what type of men they're going to be when they leave here. Just really, really high on my guys. As far as my team goes, you started with Nate Espy. Yeah, he's a 4-year starter here for us. Really good back for us. Then you go into Chris Hernandez as our quarterback, plays free safety for us. He reminds me, the longer you coach, the more you start to, you have guys that remind you of guys that you've coached in the past, right? And he's a Ramsey through and through for me. He's not a big guy at all, but there's no doubt that he's the leader of our team. Emotionally, just in every way that you can be. And he's got a toughness about him and an edge about him that just rallies guys to him. And then you have Joe Irving. He's kind of our big play guy. Runs the ball really, really well, really good on both sides. Was the returning defensive MVP of our district. And really, really good athlete. And then we have Deontay Harrison. O-line, D-line kid that's really, really good player for us. And Montez Thompson, another slot that plays safety for us. And, just have a really good collective group of guys all the way through. This senior class was a group that won a lot of games in junior high, kind of went through a lull there early in their high school career. But I think we've been able to get things turned back around and, really, really like what I see out of them.
Going back to what you were saying about, because I meant to hit on this a while ago, you was talking about 5 teams being in that district that are playoff teams and one's going to be sitting at the house. So I interviewed a coach last night. He's a coach at a 2A Division II school, and I don't know a lot about those schools, but I looked at the regions. Region, I think I forgot what region they're in, but I looked at all the teams that are in that region, and there's not a whole lot of, like, I'm sure coaches don't want to say it because they don't want to sound like a hater. So I said it for them. I was like, dude, there's not a lot of like good teams in this, in this region. You got Lovelady,
Yeah.
Grapeland. It's
Mm-hmm.
that region.
Yeah.
Lovelady, Grapeland, Mount Enterprise, and then you got Bremont, Mart, and then who won? Deweyville won that. It was West Sabine's coach who I interviewed,
Yeah.
but I was like, Deweyville won that won their district last year, and I don't know. I was like, I don't know how good they've gotten, but I know back whenever you played them at Joaquin, to me it seemed like just a game where you just go out there and you're going to be 1-0 at the end of the night.
Right. Right. No doubt. Yeah, and I mean, I think that speaks for like that district that you're talking about. There's going to be a really good team sitting at the house, and and even how the playoffs are aligned. Just going back to that. If 16 teams in a region make the playoffs, I think that no doubt about it that um, those teams should be ranked off of what they've done and go from there, district champions, I think, get an automatic playoff berth. But after that, it should go back to your body of work. I mean, you have a team that's a, 3-7 team that gets third place in a district that's a really weak district. Then you've got another team that's, 6-4 that misses out. Like I said, I think there's a better way to do it than how we do it. No doubt about it.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have these teams. A lot of those teams I don't even know of. I know Maud because you played them before when you was at Joaquin, but even they weren't that great in my opinion. But I think they're one of the top teams in their district year in
No
and year
doubt.
out. And it's a weak. It's just a weak district and a weak region in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever you get in the playoffs and you have to play these other teams, you know, there's going to be a bad team in there that wins that region, and then going to get smoked by whoever well, I don't know, because Bremont and Mart's in that. I don't know. I just know back in like 2012 when Joaquin was 10-0, they're 10 and
Mm-hmm.
0 first place team. Were you the coordinator, offensive coordinator, or was you
I was an
just
assistant coach then.
assistant coach? Okay. So I mean, you remember that though, 10 and
Oh
0,
yeah, yeah.
and then you
Remember it
lose
well.
the first playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was that
Well, it
when
was actually the second round. We got a bye
a
the
bye.
first round. How that worked was back then. Uh, we got the bye, played them second round, and because I believe they had lost one game in district, um, if I remember correctly. Um, and like I said, they beat us that night in Palestine.
Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
just remember we were like ranked like really high in the state. I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're about to go out here and this team's going to win. And they had a few losses on their schedule, but whenever you go back and look at who they played, it was like insane all the teams they played.
Yeah.
And the same with Goldthwaite in 2009. Same thing with them. They played a
Mm-hmm.
hell of a schedule that year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And all those things matter, and people get too I think too involved in being being undefeated and this and that, like you got to play other good football teams. And if you don't, it's going to show when it matters. And, like I said, I think, those are great examples of that. That year, I mean, I can remember in 12, that year you're talking about there, probably one of our big, and it wasn't our fault that year at Joaquin. I mean, we just had to play. It was actually the second year. No, it was the first year of that schedule after realignment, but we only could play who we were scheduled to play, and there were some teams that maybe had been a little better than the years before. But we didn't play a real tough schedule. In all honesty, probably the toughest team we played that year on that schedule was Carlisle, and we played a healthy Carlisle at that time. They were undefeated, and we were as well. And we beat them that night, but they ended up kind of falling apart after they had some injuries and things. And I think we played Timpson late in the year, and they were undefeated. But truth be told, they weren't a real good football team. And then it cost us when we had to play a really good team, a Bosqueville team in the playoffs. So just drawing back from those experiences, those are a lot of the reasons that when I try to create a preseason schedule, I want to have one or two on there that I know going in that maybe we're probably the underdog on it, because you've got to play those kind of games and get in those situations and those close games early to figure out where you're weak at going forward, and but that, like I said, that's all part of it. And I think you even see that now at the college level. There's very, it's very unique now and unheard of for a team to run the table and be undefeated. Now, I think it still happens a little more at the high school level. You're going to have some teams that are just, that's their year. They're that much better than everybody else, and really who you put in front of them, they're gonna beat as long as it's close in their classification level.
I think I've heard you say it before on another. I think somebody interviewed you one time and you said it. But why Waskom? What drew you to Waskom? Um,
Yeah, that's a question I get asked a lot. And it's not one thing. In all honesty, I've always made this analogy, and I've kind of always say it jokingly. Um, but coaches, whether we like to admit it or not, we're kind of all like canned goods. We all have a shelf life. Some are longer than others. But really, in all honesty, after the 2019 season, and actually, I'm gonna back up a little bit from that. When I got the opportunity to get the job at Joaquin, or even before that, I'm gonna back up even before then. When I came back to Joaquin in 2010, when I was actually going to take a job at Garrison. I had already interviewed, been given the job, and I stopped in one day coming in from Garrison, and Coach Gandy was at the field house. His truck was there. Well, I pulled in to talk with him because I was still, in shirt and tie and everything, and of course he was, joking with me about that, um, and he told me, he said, well, hey, look, he said, I'm fixing to need an offensive line coach. He said, why don't you come back here, work for me, coach the offensive line for me, coach baseball for me, and get the opportunity to coach your two youngest brothers. And he said, I told him, I said, well, okay, I would, definitely think about that. And he told me, he gave me the weekend for it. And I came back, and I kind of, before then, I kind of had some other dreams and aspirations of kind of the route that I wanted to go. Um, but I also, I come from a family that we're a tight knit group. And I was able to coach all three of my younger brothers, which is not a lot. A lot of people can't say that. And I got to see them struggle. I got to see the ups and downs that I believe that football provides a young man. And just to get those experiences with them. Otherwise I would have never got that. And like I said, I kind of had some other dreams and aspirations. I kind of wanted to coach at a higher level. At that time, I kind of thought about trying to get into the collegiate level, try that route. But I came back, and got the opportunity to coach them, got the opportunity to work, underneath the guy that I played for, learn a tremendous amount. And I'll touch back on that here in a little bit, how I think everything kind of goes together in your coaching, journey. But anyway, when in 2015, when Coach Gandy retired, and I was presented with the opportunity to lead that program. At the time I was 27 years old, and I felt like that the town and that program had given me so much in my life. There was a group of kids there that I just felt like I needed to see that through with them. I needed to try to get the program back to, a level, get it back to where I thought it should be and even higher than what it had been. So I took that challenge on. I thought we had a really good run. I thought we kind of got things turned around, beat a lot of good teams, that probably we went out and played them. We probably weren't the better team on the field, but we beat them anyway. But fast forward there, to after the 2019 season, we had a really good run, had a lot of good seniors in that class. And I was kind of getting the feeling then, to be honest with you, but it wasn't the right time. My grandparents at that time were kind of they were getting older. I kind of felt like I needed to be around a little bit. I knew that chapter of my life with them was getting shorter every day. Then we rolled into 2020 season. It's probably to this day, probably the coaching job that I'm probably the most proud of. We had lost like 9 2A starters from the year before. And just to be honest, we were not really good to start that year at all. I mean, we just weren't. Love those guys, but we had a long way to go to be a good team. We rattled off 8 wins in a row, and played Timpson for a district championship. Which, I mean, hey, they got after us good that night. And then COVID and some injuries finally caught up with us, and we got knocked out the first round of the playoffs. We were 8-2 that year. Really thought that we overachieved in a lot of ways, but I could sense I guess maybe a little bit of people maybe weren't happy, with that. As good a job as I thought we did, I could kind of feel that coming. Just the rumblings, that happened. And then, we turned around in 21, probably, just had a ton of injuries. Still, I thought we played well, competed well, lost in a double overtime to Garrison that knocked us from second place to fourth place. Then we turned around, had to play a really good Beckville team in the playoffs in Henderson. They beat us that night. And for me, I wasn't happy with that, so I knew I had a good group coming in 22. And I wanted to, get things right. Had a fantastic season, probably one of the most memorable seasons that I've ever had. Probably top to bottom, probably the best team that I've ever coached, in a lot of ways. I thought they were really a really good football team in 22. I thought from all the teams that we ever had while I was there, or even before me, I thought the 22 team was probably the most complete team that we had at Joaquin. And, I remember walking off the field that night. We just didn't play well against Cooper. The ball didn't really bounce our way, and they beat us. And we were really wanting another matchup with Timpson for the regional finals. We had dropped one 22-25 with them for the district championship. We thought we kind of had the recipe to maybe beat them. that's not how it worked out. That's football. That's life. And, you know, after that, I remember walking off the field that night, and I kind of had the sense of maybe that was my last game, there, which is a really hard reality because in a lot of ways, I really kind of thought that I would be there forever. Then, things got going. I remember telling my wife when I got home that night, I coached my last game at Joaquin tonight, babe, and she told me, oh, you're just emotional. Wait, go to sleep, because I was upset, but then we turned around, we got into the off season, and it was a lot of the same from like 19 to 20 was a lot from like say 22 to 23. I had a young group of guys coming. I had a staff there that, I basically put everybody together. We were really close. And I knew we were going to struggle a little bit. I knew that as a coach. I've just done it long enough to know what I'm seeing every day in the weight room. Um, just the inexperience that I knew we were going to have up front. We're going to be really young. And I still thought that we could put together a playoff football team, but then, we got into the season and we were just as riddled with injuries I've ever seen, and we lost, I guess, like 5 two-way guys for the season, something like that. And it just killed us, We ended up going 2-7. Probably the most, I guess it's a scar that I'll wear the rest of my life. I was just disappointed in the job that I did. Didn't, and I really hate it for those kids. And then this job come available, so we had always scrimmaged Waskom for all those years when I was at Joaquin. I knew Coach Keeling really well. And I just always had a lot of respect for how they played, like I thought they always played with a lot of grit, a lot of determination, just tough, raw, hard nosed kids, and anybody that knows me knows that kind of fits my personality. That's kind of how I coach, how I am. But I wrestled with it for a while. It was really hard on me. Because I felt like I was turning my back on, a town and a school that, was so good to me and that I love so much. My dad's still a coach there, my best friends were my coordinators. Just, all these different things. So I just kind of told myself, if it's meant to be, it'll be. I had a conversation over Thanksgiving that weekend, or that we were off on a Tuesday. We were getting ready to have Thanksgiving, and the superintendent called me at that time, which she's at Miss Ray Ann Patty, which is at Gladewater now. And she called me, and we had about an hour and a half conversation. And I knew then that things were trending to where, okay, this is, you have that feeling sometimes. It's kind of a running joke. She called me and asked me what I was doing. I was washing windows at that time for Thanksgiving. So I told her, "It's what sorry football coaches have to do for Thanksgiving, have to get all our honeydews done. If we were good, we'd still be coaching, So it's a running joke between me and her. But, I just, one thing led to another. Went through the interview process and everything, and just everything kept falling into place. And I knew that I had a really good idea that if I left, that Jared would get the job at Joaquin, which is what I wanted, and I pushed for it extremely hard when I knew I was leaving. I thought he earned that right to have that, that opportunity. I knew that Joaquin had a chance to be pretty good that year. And that was another reason the year before I knew it. I didn't want to leave then because I didn't want to set whoever behind me up for, an opportunity to maybe struggle a little bit. You know what I mean? Because as coaches, we really care about, the guys who work for us, and especially, with me and Jared, I mean, Lord, we've known each other since we were in kindergarten, been my best friend, best men in each other's weddings, I mean, there when our kids were born, don't get no tighter than that. So, I knew then, he would have a pretty good group of kids. They had always been really successful. I knew they were in good hands, and I just felt good about it then. I thought he was ready to be a head coach. I knew my dad was going to stay the whole time, and that he would be there with him. And it was just the right time. God don't make mistakes, and then as soon as I walked in the door here and I met my kids at Waskom, I knew it then. I knew it was a group of kids that they needed me and I needed them. They had something to prove. They were coming off a really subpar season. I was coming off a really subpar season. And it was just kind of like, love at first sight. I took to them, they took to me. I do things a little differently here than I did them at Joaquin. But I think that's coaching. I think, the needs here for what, gets our kids to play and what, makes us a really good team here. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and as a coach, you have to adapt to that, especially in high school. From school to school, you have to adapt. And, because, like I said, some of our weaknesses here may have been strengths at Joaquin and vice versa. So I had to figure that out. And, like I said, I couldn't be happier. This town and this community and these kids have taken to me and my family. They love us, and it's a real sense of pride every day to get to come to work and try to get us here back to the top of the mountain, holding up, a state championship trophy at the end of the year.
Is 14 and 15 the only years Waskom has won state championships?
It is. It is.
Okay.
They played in the semifinals in 13, and then they played in the semifinals in 20 and 21. So, I knew that coming in here. You're talking about over a decade of football. They were one of the last four teams standing. And that's pretty impressive. That just goes to show that, it's not just one good group. It wasn't a flash in the pan here. There's athletes and football is important here. If you look over a decade, it's really important. So, and as a coach, you want to be somewhere it's important, just like our weight room, our field house here, it's very nice. And, I'd put it up against anybody in Class 2A football. So, winning football games is important in Waskom. And as the AD and head football coach, that's where you want to be.
The other day I interviewed Kerry Lane. He's the head coach at New Diana. Mm-hmm. And he coached at Gilmer for several years under Jeff Traylor and Alan Metzel, who's there now. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much said what drew him to leave Gilmer. He didn't want to because he'd been there so long, it's his home, But he knew as long as he was there, it was always going to be the house that Jeff Traylor had built. Mm-hmm. And would it be safe to say that Waskom is the house that Whitney Keeling built? Or is that not 100%. A good? It is? 100%. Okay.
And, that was kind of, when I came here, that's what, I was last year, I told everybody, I said, like for me as a coach, you have to be comfortable with that. Like, I can't come in here and be somebody that I'm not, try to, disprove the things that in the accomplishments that had taken place before I got here. No doubt about it. This place, Whitney Keeling built this place. And like I told them all, I'm just going to turn the lights back on. And, that was my rallying cry to our kids. I'm not going to expect these kids to be the 2014-15. I don't, Kevin Johnson and Chan Amy and Junebug Johnson and those guys, they've lived their life here. They've played here. You know what I mean? It's over and done with. I wasn't going to expect, Joe Irving, Nate Espy, Kelton Williams, those guys, Montez Thompson, like I need those guys to be them, just like I'm going to be me. And, we're never going to be responsible for the group that built this place, but we will be responsible for turning the lights back on and everything that happens after this, and we've taken to that, and I just think, that's just part of, you got to be comfortable with who you are. You got to respect the past. And, I have a lot of respect for Coach Keeling and the guys that were here. I thought they did a fine job. And look, in a lot of ways, if Coach Keeling wouldn't have came here and accomplished the things that he did, maybe I wouldn't be here. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I got to see firsthand what this place can be, and want to come and be a part of it.
This question, I've asked a few coaches so far, but this question was asked of me by Jason Odom. He wanted me to ask all these coaches this question. So, who do you have circled on your schedule as a big game potentially, and who is Waskom's rival? I feel like I know who your rival is.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think that's kind of a multifaceted question. No doubt Beckville is circled on our schedule. We knew going into the year, we felt like that, last year and this year, they're a huge game in our district. And then, as rival wise go, it's Elysian Fields. There's no doubt about it. They're red hot right now, playing good football. I got my first experience with that last year, and it's something, but I think our kids handle it well. It's all in good fun, and a lot of the kids, they know each other. A lot of the families know each other, go to church with one another, and like I said, it's just good small town East Texas football.
In your opinion, and this is another question that was asked of me, but in your opinion, what's the value of a head coach?
Oh, no doubt. The value to me is first and foremost a father figure. I believe in that. Not every young man or woman, depending on head coach and what sport you're in, not everybody needs that parent figure. They have that, but a kid can never be loved too much. They can never have too many good influences on them. They can't, um, and I truly believe it takes a village. It does, and I'll take myself for example on this. I can go back um, and tell anybody why I do what I do. For me personally, I was blessed. I had a great father, great loving family. Just like any family, no family's perfect. But I had a lot of good in my life. When I was a freshman in high school, spring of my freshman year, my mother passed away unexpectedly. Um, and the first person I saw the next morning was Coach Jay Jones, my baseball coach. And I knew then that I was never going to do anything but coach. I knew then that right then that the impact that had on me, in the most trying day of my life thus far, the first person I saw was my coach, the same guy that, I could never please in practice. I never did anything good enough for him, but yet when I needed him, he was there. And I knew right then that if I could provide that to any young person that ever needed me, there's nothing else that I could ever want to do for a living, and I still carry that to me. I talked to him last week. I still carry that, that thought process to this day. I carry that with me of, remembering the big picture of what this is all truly for. I've never coached a kid that's got paid to play, never have, but I've coached a ton of husbands and fathers and employees. And if I can help shape and mold them to be the kind of men that are productive in society and, love their wives, take their children to church, or great dads to their kids and teach their kids right from wrong, it was a win in my opinion.
Do you listen to any podcasts, like sports podcasts or anything like that?
I do all the time. I listen to various football podcasts. Throughout the year, I think go back. I can look here and go back through here. You know, some of the big ones to me. I listen to Coaching Coordinator podcast. A lot of good things on there. I listen to Coach Vass's "Make Defense Great Again" podcast. I like that. And then I listen to a lot of audio books. Right now I'm currently going through Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line. I think it's a really good book. Bill Belichick's book. Just got through listening to Pete Carroll's. And it's amazing what all of those great coaches, the thing that they put first and foremost was trying to develop good people. You know what I mean? Like, if you have good people in your organization and you're trying to develop good people, everything else is everything else. And, it's amazing just how forward thinking those guys are, and, I just, like I said, I'll put it on. I got about a 30-minute drive to work, and I'll zone in and listen. And, it's just amazing to me. I guess after I hear those things and hear their thoughts, it's no surprise then why those guys are so successful, and I think as a coach, we owe it to our kids to always be forward thinking, always trying to learn something new, always trying to get better. We tell our kids every day to, get better today than you were tomorrow. But as a coach, we have to live that as well, because the game is ever evolving. I just think about, defensively right now, everything that we try to stop offensively, how much that's changed is just say 10 years time, um, but what's also funny about that is the game often still comes down to blocking, tackling, and taking care of the football, so but schematically you just have to you have to work every day. And then just from our, like I said, going back to you asking about podcasts and stuff like that, just, listening to those guys and, and I started listening to your podcast interviews that you've had with some of these other head coaches. And, it's just, it's amazing to me how many good men are out there and truly trying to make a difference in our communities.
Do you know Travis McClain? He's the head coach at Mount Vernon.
I do not. I do not. I know he was at Rivercrest, I believe, last year.
Yes, sir.
And I believe he was at Salina before that. And I had met with a guy at one point that knew him, and we were in conversation. And, just the things that he told me about him, I don't. I'm not surprised at all that he's got Mount Vernon turned around that quickly. Some guys just have the it factor; they can do it. And I'm happy to hear about his success because I think he's trying to do things the right way too.
That's what I was going to tell you. He's got his own podcast too. It's called The Quick Six, and it's. I was telling Carrie Lane, we was talking about it, and I was like, yeah, it's a little bit above my head because it's like they're talking like ball and like real like football stuff that like about, but I don't know about. Yeah. But it's good. I like it. I like him. And I was telling someone the other day.
I didn't realize that he had a podcast. I'll have to check that out.
I was telling someone the other day, I was like, I feel like he's the next great thing in East Texas football. But the reason I was asking about podcasts is the one I listen to the most is Bussin' with the Boys. And they have a tier talk they do. So I was like, I'm going to do a tier talk with Coach Lawson. And yours will probably be better than mine because you know more about Joaquin football than I do because you got 10 years on me. But we're going to tier talk the top 3 Joaquin football players of all time, but pretty much from like 2000 on. that you can remember and that I can remember.
In
Start
any
with three
position
and
group?
yeah, start with three and go down 3, 2, 1. And if you have an honorable mention, you can do that too.
Ooh, I've got several honorable mentions. I think Nate Belrose, and the only reason that is just he faced so many injuries his last 2 years. Um, Nate was a fine football player. You know, I thought offensive line, honorable mention. I thought Austin Underbrink was a really, really good player for us. Um, Andre Brown in that category. God, there's so many. I mean, I could just go back through all those years of of kids. Oh man, wow, this is a tough one. This is a real tough one. Boogie was a really good one for me. Maddox Hutchins, really, really good one. Um, okay, top three, starting with three. Wow. Okay. Hmm. Probably have to go number three. I'd have to go Connor Bragg. Um, I thought he played all 4 years. Really good player, really explosive player. Really, really, really good football player. Number two, um, in my opinion, hmm, I'm gonna backtrack for a second. I'm gonna go back with some of those honorable mentions. I think that Eric Permenter and Patrick Gandy and Bradley Gandy all have to be in that. I'm not gonna put myself in that. All them dudes are better than me. Um, Kyle Gibbs as well that I played with. But number two, I think I'd have to go with Malik Stotts. He was just a great athlete. College, collegiate level football player. Really, had D1 offers. I mean, he was Malik was a really, really good football player. And in my opinion, of guys that I coached and just what they were able to do, in my opinion, I thought Case Yates was probably the best all around football player that I coached. He ran really well, played the game um, with a tenacity and just rawness about him. Um, Measurable wise and just all around football player, offense, defense. I thought Case Yates may have been the best we ever had put on a set of horns.
I don't have any honorable mentions because I would have too many.
Yeah, it's a ton
Uh,
of them. Man. A lot of good football players and a lot of good kids.
but my number three, I didn't want to be like, oh, a running back, and a running back. I was trying to think of like just dudes that play at 100% at all times. So my number three, he scored a lot of points for you and blocked well, and he had a motor, Jesus Bravo.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
That's my number three. Number two, going back to my junior high years, Cole Lefflett. He's my number
Yeah,
two. And then number one is the same as your number one, Case Yates. I think he's probably the best thing that's ever came through Joaquin. And I think if he would have went to a school like Carthage or somewhere really big that can put guys in Division One football, he'd I don't know what position, probably like a safety or something,
yeah,
but he was he was a freak. And
yeah. He was, and that goes back to that year. I believe it was 18. You know, was one of the better teams that I had. And we really thought that we could win the district. And possibly win the region that year. And Connor Bragg tore his meniscus and MCL first game against Alto. And then late in the year, Case had a really, really bad high ankle sprain. And they were out for a long time. Ended up, I mean, they played that night. We played Centerville, but I think the first practice they had was maybe the Thursday before we played on that Friday night, and they were just a shell of themselves. Just their mental toughness and their tenacity is what got them out there to play. Neither one were healthy enough to really play, but they were just tough, hard nosed kids. And anybody that knows me, if a kid says, "By God, I can play," I'm gonna play them. Because I think that's we expect them. I just, in my opinion, I got a lot of respect for that. It's one of those years we bowed out of the playoffs early, and probably had a team that was good enough to play in December. But that just wasn't, like last year, for example. That was the big thing. Like, me and Jared's talked about this at length. It was like he battled injuries all year, but when he needed everybody healthy, he had all the horses to put on the track. And that's just such a big factor in 2A football. And as a coach, sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. You get the hand that you're dealt, and you got to play it the best you can. And which it wasn't like the Centerville team that beat us that night. It was a bad team. They played for the regional finals, but we lost 20-10 in a tough game at All Saints that night.
I really, really, really hope to see Waskom and Joaquin face off in the playoff. I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people look forward to that.
That's a mixed one for me. And it's not. Anybody that knows me knows there's no part of me scared to go compete. I don't have that about me. But to me, and at some point it's going to come. Whether it's this year, whether it's in years down the road. I mean, if we both stay 2A, we're going to end up playing. At some point, we'll either meet in the playoffs or I'll end up on the visitor sideline. At Ram Stadium, which will be weird, but. Because I have so much that I'm proud of there. You know what I mean? Like when I took that program over, just look at the facilities and look at everything. If you went from day one to the day I left, it's a total different place. And I'm really proud of the body of work I was able to put together there. And had so many great kids that played for me. Got to work with so many great people and great administrators, and it's by no means that did I do all that, but I'd like to think I had a part in it, and that makes me proud. I'm still proud when I drive by there to go back to Lawson Hill to see my family, and but going back to the game, if we ever were to play, it's a lot of. I just think about the pressure for my kids here at Waskom. I know they're going to want to win that game, and competing against, my dad and my best friend and a bunch of kids that I still know. It'll be weird, but hey, it'll all be in good fun. And, when it happens, it happens. And we'll roll the ball out there and we'll play it, I promise you. And, we'll get after it.
I'm going to ask this question, but I feel like I know the answer. Which do you like more, college or NFL?
Oh, definitely college.
Some Week 5 matchups this week. Tell me who you think's going to win. Number 6, Oregon, or number 3, Penn State?
Oh, I'm going to go with Oregon. I think, where is it at?
At Penn State. I'm still going Oregon, though.
I'm going to Oregon. I believe in Dan Lanning. I think, and we can circle back to this in a minute, but I believe that who you learn from makes a big difference, and I think he learned from the best to ever do it. So,
number 24, TCU at Arizona State.
Well, Arizona State.
I'm going TCU. Number 22, Notre Dame at Arkansas.
Notre Dame.
I think
they're, they lost 2 tough football games, but I think they're a really good football team.
Absolutely. That's who I'm taking. Number 21, USC at number 23, Illinois.
I'm going to go USC.
Same. Illinois just got smacked this past weekend.
Yeah.
Number 4, LSU at 13, Ole Miss.
I'm going Ole Miss.
I'll take LSU on that. But I don't know. They really haven't played too good this year to be undefeated in number 4.
Yeah.
Number 9, A&M at Auburn.
God. I'm gonna go A&M. Like A&M gets it done. I like Hugh Freeze, but they were in a really emotional, tough game last week. It's hard to get yourself back up, back to back, especially with a team that hasn't done it a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's who I'm taking, A&M. 15, Tennessee at Mississippi State.
Tennessee.
Same. And then this one, everyone's got their eye on it. Number 17, Alabama at number 5, Georgia.
I think Georgia takes it, and I think they take it pretty easily.
I'm going to take Alabama just because I know Saban's not there, so they're not the same team. But I'm just going to go Alabama just because.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm a Bama guy, but I'll say this: if and it goes back to that first one we were talking about. I think who you work under matters. Who you learn from matters. And if I have one guy that probably, I guess if I was a kid and I was going to go play for one guy, I had one person to pick to get to go play for, it'd be Kirby Smart. I think he's real. I think he's raw. I think he is. I think he is who he is, and I got a lot of respect for that. A lot of the things that he does and how he is, I think, I guess maybe there's a little bit of that sees a little piece of myself like this, like that, I mean, I just, anybody that knows me knows, I can get a little excited at times. And, and I coach, with a lot of passion. I think he does too. And, I got a lot of respect for what he did at Georgia. He went there and he made it his own. And he learned from the best to ever do it, and I think I have so much respect and admiration for the guys that I got to learn from. I work for two guys that and and I told them this here in the interview here. Coming in this, we were 3-7 the year before I got here. And, they wanted to know how I was going to get things turned around and this and that. And I just told them, I said, look, I'm going to draw back from what I know. I worked for two guys who came into two programs that were historically two of the worst programs in East Texas with, Coach Baker at Carlisle and Coach Gandy at Joaquin. And I'm going to draw from what I learned from them and I'm going to get it turned around here, and, I just think those, like I said, I learned so much from those two guys. They couldn't be any different. I mean, such different coaches and their styles and how they did things on a day-to-day basis, but learned so much from them and so grateful that I had the opportunity to get to work for both of them.
So Lanning and Kirby Smart, they both coached under Saban. I think Lanning, if he ever decided to leave Oregon, people say he won't because of all that NIL money. But I think he'd be a phenomenal coach in the Southeastern Conference. He's one of my favorite coaches.
He's going to, because here's the thing about coaches. Any of us, we're drawn to competition. That's what we want. We yearn for it. You want to test yourself. You want to look across there and know that guy on that other sideline, that he might be better than you. There's that anticipation and that almost just, whether you want to call it nervous energy, am I as good as him? Can I prepare my team like he can? Are my dudes as good as his dudes? And at some point, he will want to come back to the SEC because there is no doubt. I mean, anybody can say what they want to. I mean, it's the mecca of college football, and like I said, we all have that in us, and he'll be in the SEC before long, but he'll be somewhere that he'll have the ability to win. It'll be one of those jobs that, he can compete with the big dogs NIL wise and just facility wise and everything else. But eventually it'll happen. Or I think so anyway.
I hope so. I've been saying that for a couple of years. What's your favorite sports movie?
Ooh, favorite sports movie. Probably Remember the Titans. To be honest with you, really, it's a. I just think it touches so many other things besides football that are so important to being a good person. Maybe I can relate to a little bit because I've got daughters. And but just I probably Remember the Titans.
So I remember whenever you was at Joaquin, and I've told a lot of people this too. Like, we would play like Hawkins or Burkeville or Deweyville or whoever, and I would always be like, "Why are we playing these teams? Like, I know they're easy wins, but I was like, I want to play West Rusk, I want to play Newton, I want to play Dangerfield. Like, that's the
Mhm.
teams I want to play." Because I always said, I was like, I feel like we would lose those games, but I don't feel like we would like lose them like 60-0. I feel like Joaquin always competed. And I remember me and Trent Ramsey, we went to a game several years ago. We went and watched Gladewater and West Rusk play, and they were two really good teams at the time. And every time those teams play, they just played like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
It's always a low scoring defensive game. But Trenton and I both said, we was like, dude, Joaquin would probably lose against these teams, but it would be a really good game, I feel like. That's who I always wanted to see them play. Well, I went and watched Newton and Tatum play the other day, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of glad we never did play Newton because those guys are nasty.
yeah,
Dangerfield and West Rusk, I feel strongly about, but Newton, I was like, I'm glad we never did play those guys.
yeah.
Would you rather win a game 6-0 or 62-58?
6-0 all day.
I remember 2000 and probably one of the best games I've ever seen. 2011, walking at Frankston.
Yeah,
It was like 58-56.
yeah.
They
Well,
say those games take years off your life.
yeah. Well, in my opinion, now as like I said, that doesn't make me right, but most of the time, and look, every game has a life of itself. Every matchup is a little different, and this isn't always the case. But I think more often than not, when teams are in the 50 to something, 50-50 type games, stuff like that, probably the reason why is neither team is real good, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if you can't get stops, if you're not good defensively, and look, I mean, we may go we may go out this week with Ore City and have the same thing. You know what I mean? I mean, every game is different, and we've had to win games. I mean, I guess here, I mean, I could just think of it. Even at Joaquin over the years, there were some games that we had that were kind of high scoring games, but just like I go back to that 22 season, we scored a ton of points that year. Timpson scored a ton of points that year. But when two good football teams met, it was a 20-something ball game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I think that, that's usually the mark of two really good teams playing each other. Us
absolutely.
and Garrison last year, 21-20, 13-9. And I thought both of us, either one could have won the region, and like I said, I turn around Honey Grove. That was a really high scoring game with us in Honey Grove. But I knew as easily as we scored on them, and with us making all the mistakes that we made, ended up costing us the game. After we played it, I told Jones, I said, "Man, y'all can beat them." You know what I mean? Because they weren't good enough defensively, and everything else played out like it did.
Absolutely. All right. Scenario for you. Goodness. You're down 14-0 at the half, scores 20-6. They're killing you with the jet sweep. I kind of went over the scenario the other day with the coach, but They're killing you with the jet sweep, spreading the defense out. How do you contain or stop it going into the second half? You've got 6 points, but I know what kind of offense you run there at Waskom, and you run the ball a lot, but you can't run the ball inside. That's what you've done all night so far, and it has not worked. So I guess you're going to have to go outside the tackles. But how do
Mhm.
you adjust and come out and win in the second half?
Okay, so they're running jet sweep on us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and they're in the spread.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I think we'd have to start with we'd have to mix up our coverage schemes. You know how we're handling on the edge. Whether we'd probably have to start choking some, mixing up who's the force defender. Would probably be my first go to. We would have to figure out are they hitting us to the field or the boundary with it. If it's from the field side, we would probably call some type of creeper blitz, simulated pressure to get that from the field, but also have an overhang that is the flat defender. Would probably be my first go tos. I don't anybody that runs jet sweep really good. I don't really like being locked up in man all night. It makes it really hard. And but those would probably be my first go tos. We'd figure out we would try to mix up who is going to be our force defender on them, and then figure out are they killing us to the field or to the boundary side. And then offensively, we're down 20-6 coming out of half. We would do what we do. You know what I mean? We would figure out, all right, if we're not able to run the ball up the middle, what is it? Is it, are they hurting the zone? Are they hurting zone dive? Do they have one too many in the box for us? Are they, if that's the case, then we need to get our option game going. We would probably get into more some condensed type formations to add a man back into the box to help with that because they would still have to have count in the option game. And then definitely play action. You got to be able to throw the football, and so that would probably be what we would discuss. And try to make a play in specials somewhere. Try to make a big play in specials, get a turnover, something like that. Give us an opportunity at a quick score, and then go from there.
You're 13-4 at Waskom. That's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take it. Out of those four, all four of them hurt me though. 'Cause I thought we could have won all four of them games, and but like I said, we gonna try to be 2-0 this week. Gonna try to go, put together, get better each day, and try to go defend our district title. And it's like I told our kids, right now we're the hunted. Everybody's hunting us, but when we kick the ball off, we've got to remind people that we're still the hunters. And that's the mindset how we're going to play with.
I had a lot of stuff written down, and I was like, I want to talk about this. I want to hit this point. I want to hit that point. But I
Yeah,
knew this one would be long.
yeah. Well, it's been good, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. And I think what you're doing is really, really good. I think it's good for people to on the outside to get to listen to all these head coaches, and I think if they do, the common denominator of it all is that you've got a group of guys that care about kids. They love kids. They want to see those young men be successful in life, and that is so important, so important. And there's a lot of good men out there, a lot of good men. And
Mm-hmm.
I look at it all the time, and I say this, and people can think about it what they are, but unfortunately, we're judged on wins and losses a lot of times. That's the nature of the beast. We knew that when we signed up for it. Texas is, I mean, it's a football state. I mean, look at the facilities, look at the money they put into it. Communities do, and they expect you to win. But I think a lot of really good guys are let go every year, and and I think that's a shame. That are good men trying to teach kids to do the right things and be accountable and be good people. And there's just so many good football coaches out there, and and I think the longer I'm in this, I just see what an impact that so many of them have made on so many young men's life, just like one made on me. And you know, and I always keep that in consideration when I'm dealing with kids, and I'm gonna love them. I think when they walk out every Friday night, I'm gonna hug them before they walk on that field. I tell them I love them every day, and I just think that love's the most powerful thing in the world. And there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my family that I love. And I think when you take a group of kids and coaching staff and a community and they love one another, it's a powerful, powerful thing. And I love my kids here; they love me, and I think we got it cooking. So I'm ready to see how far that can take us.
Yes, sir. I'm excited for y'all. Well, like I said, I hope to see you and Joaquin mix it up one day. Hopefully it's this year. But either way, the best team's going to come out on top. I'm biased. I'm a Wade Lawson guy, which makes me a Waskom guy. I don't know who I'd go for if you're playing Joaquin. I just know whoever wins deserves it.
Yeah,
because that day is going to come,
it will.
like you
It
said.
will. And right now, like I said, my biggest thought process is on Ore City. Anybody that knows me knows. I mean, I am hook, line, and sinker on Ore City right now, trying to be 2-0, trying to get us better each week, defend our district championship, and then whatever we see in the playoffs, we'll see, and you know we'll play them for 48 minutes, and we're done. We're gonna need one more point on the scoreboard, and they have. So,
Yes, sir. Well, I hope y'all stay healthy, and I hope you have a great year. Okay, Coach?
hey, thank you so much for having me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, bye bye.